You know, every single day, money is crossing borders all around the world. A lot of it goes to fund absolutely vital work. We're talking charities, nonprofits, you name it. But what happens when a government starts to worry that that money might come with, well, strings attached? That is the core idea behind a really powerful and often controversial law, India's Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, or as you'll hear it called, the FCRA. I mean, it's a great question to start with, isn't it? On the one hand, you've got foreign money that can fuel incredible, life-changing work in areas like health, education, and human rights. But on the other hand, governments are always a little bit worried about foreign influence creeping into their domestic affairs. And the FCRA is basically a rule book built to navigate that exact tension. And here it is, the law itself. This is the 2010 version, and its mission, well, it's stated right there in black and white. The entire legal framework is built around this one very powerful phrase, protecting the national interest. That's the guiding star for everything that follows. Okay, so to really get a handle on how this law works, we first have to speak its language. So let's start with the absolute basics. What exactly is a foreign contribution in the eyes of the FCRA? Well, turns out it's a pretty broad definition. We're not just talking about a wire transfer of cash here. The law covers physical goods, things like medical equipment or a shipment of computers, and it even includes financial assets, like stocks and bonds. Basically, if it's coming from a foreign source, you can bet it's covered. So then the next logical question is, what's a foreign source? And again, the net is cast incredibly wide. It's pretty much exactly what you'd think. Other governments, huge international bodies like the UN or the World Bank, any company that's incorporated outside India, and yep, even an individual person who isn't an Indian citizen. So that's the what. We know what a foreign contribution is. Now let's move on to the who. Which people and which organizations are the ones most directly impacted by all these rules? The Act pretty much splits everyone into two big buckets. In the first bucket, you've got a group of people and organizations that are flat out prohibited from touching foreign funding. No exceptions. And then, in the second bucket, you have everyone else who can accept it, but they have to follow a very specific, very regulated path to do so. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Just look at who is on this prohibited list. The law is laser-focused on individuals and groups that are right at the heart of the country's political and public discourse. You can see the logic here, right? It's trying to build a kind of firewall to prevent foreign influence from touching elections, the media, the judiciary, and the government itself. Okay, so if politicians and journalists are out, then who is this law really for? Well, this is where we get to civil society. The FCRA primarily regulates nonprofits, charitable trusts, and similar groups that often rely on global funding to do their work. But to get that money, they have to play by a very strict set of rules. And that brings us right to the core of the FCRA's day-to-day impact. What are the actual rules of the game? What does an organization have to do to legally accept and use foreign funding? It really boils down to this four-step path. First, you need the government's okay. That could be a one-time prior permission for a specific project or a full 5-year registration. Second, and this is absolutely critical, all that foreign money has to go into one single designated bank account. Third, you can only use the money for the reason you said you would, no using it for, say, speculative investments. And finally, it all comes with a ton of paperwork, rigorous bookkeeping, and mandatory annual reports to the government. I just want to pause on this quote for a second because it really shows you how serious these rules are. This single line from the law itself highlights just how important that one single bank account is. All foreign money must flow through this one monitored channel. It is the government's key mechanism for control. All right, I've got a number for you, 50%. Now, in the context of using foreign funds, what on earth do you think this percentage cap could possibly apply to? Any guesses? And here's your answer. The law puts a very strict ceiling on overhead. An organization can't use more than half of a foreign donation to pay for its own administrative costs. We're talking salaries, rents, office supplies, that kind of thing. The idea is to make sure that the vast majority of the funds are actually going directly to the work on the ground. So we've laid out the rules, but what happens if somebody breaks them? Are they just suggestions? Spoiler alert, no. The Act gives the government some pretty significant powers to make sure everyone stays in line. This chart lays out the government's enforcement toolkit, and it is powerful. It can start with a simple inspection of the books, but if officials suspect something's wrong, they can suspend an organization's license for 180 days while they investigate. If they find a violation, or even for a vaguer reason like public interest, they can cancel the registration completely. And as a final measure, they have the power to just seize and confiscate the funds or goods themselves. And the consequences for the people involved can be really severe. We're not just talking about administrative penalties. This can mean hefty fines, and for the most serious offenses, actual jail time of up to 5 years. The message the law is sending is crystal clear. Non-compliance has serious teeth. Okay, let's pull back from all the specific sections and rules for a moment and just look at the big picture here. What is the fundamental point of this entire complex structure? And here we are, right back where we started. The FCRA, at its absolute core, is a balancing act. It's trying to thread a very difficult needle. On one side, allowing genuine, well-meaning organizations to get the global funding they need, while on the other side, building a firewall to stop any money that could be used in ways the government sees as harmful. And that really leaves us with this final big question. And it's a challenge that not just India, but countries all over the world are constantly grappling with. How do you draw that line? Where does legitimate regulation end, and where does harmful restriction begin? The FCRA is one country's answer to that question, and it's a debate that continues to shape the vital work of thousands of organizations every single day.